Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on a topic that's becoming increasingly important for pharmaceutical companies operating in diverse global markets. I'm April from Accestra Consulting, and I'm very glad to have the opportunity to discuss the comparison of China DMF with EU and US with you all today. As you know, DMF is an essential part of the drug approval process and plays a critical role in ensuring the safety and efficacy of pharmaceutical products. With different regulatory requirements in each region, it can be challenging to navigate the DMF process, particularly when it comes to China, EU, and US. During this webinar, we'll explore the key similarities and differences between the DMF requirements in China, EU, and US, and discuss the best practices for pharmaceutical companies looking to streamline their DMF submissions and approval processes across multiple markets. I'm excited to share my insights and expertise on this important topic and looking forward to an engaging and informative session with you all. So during this presentation, we'll provide an overview of China's DMF regulatory framework and explore the latest updates and changes. We'll examine the registration pathway requirements and the strategies. We'll also provide a detailed comparison of China's DMF requirements with those of EU and US. In addition to discussing the regulatory landscape, we'll also share practical tips and strategies for optimizing your DMF submission and approval process in China, as well as exploring common mistakes that pharmaceutical companies make and how to avoid them. Finally, we'll close the presentation with a Q&A session, giving you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have and gain further insights from our experts. If you have a question, please input in the chat box and we will answer these during the Q&A session. Thank you. So to start with, I'll briefly introduce myself and our company. My name is April, and I'm the Regulatory Affairs Manager at Accestra Consulting, with my in-depth understanding on pharmaceutical regulatory and market access requirements in China, and my passion for seamless communication and commitment to facilitating the drug registration process. I've supported many international pharmaceutical companies with their projects including DMF, pre-IND meetings, IND, NDA, and ANDA submissions. Now, allow me to introduce our company. Accestra Consulting is a specialist China regulatory affairs outsourcing partner for the pharmaceuticals, medical device, and food industries. We have a very strong technical team with over 15 years of experience in RA, QC, and PV services. We have served clients from over 23 countries with strong communication with multilingual capability to serve international clients. Our services include regulatory affairs services, local representative in China, pharmacovigilance, GMP auditing, and others. I'll be sharing the regulatory framework and then the pathway options to register DMF in China. The regulatory framework and the government departments responsible for DMF filing in China are displayed in the pyramid. At the top is the Congress and the State Council, mainly responsible for drafting laws such as the Drug Administration Law. The second tier is NMPA, short for the National Medical Products Administration, mainly responsible for drafting regulations and supervising market access approval and post-marketing surveillance of medical products. It was formerly known as CFDA, which is a counterpart of US FDA and EMA. At the bottom is CDE, short for the Center for Drug Evaluation, the technical support agency under NMPA for drug products. All the application dossiers should be submitted to CDE for review. There are another two important departments under NMPA. One is NIFDC, responsible for quality testing and specification review. And the other one is CFDI, responsible for on-site inspection. So the drug regulatory framework of China has undergone significant reforms in recent years. Previously, China established an approval system where our APIs, excipients, packaging materials should be registered separately to obtain import drug license. The whole process was very costly and took several years to obtain market entry. So for convenience, I will refer to AEP in the following slides. AEP is short for APIs, excipients, and packaging materials. In 2017, the most impactful policy reform was the release of announcement number 146, which canceled the old approval system and replaced with new filing system. From then on, AEPs have the pathway to go through a binding review and approval as part of the drug registration. The new system was a significant leap change in management concept by the Chinese regulators. Instead of regulating AEP and drug products as separate individual elements, NMPA treats these as a whole and focuses on the drug products, which means the MA holder should take the main responsibility for quality and safety. The new DMF policy is now more closely aligned with international systems, with the harmonization of ICH guidelines and management systems, which shares more similarities with the EU and U.S. systems. Although local differences still present, it is now a much more attractive time to enter China market with faster registration pathways and market access. So the new system has three pathway options for AEP approval. For the first pathway, which is also the most common pathway under the new DMF policy, is binding review and approval, where the AEP applicant prepares DMF dossier and files the application to CDE for completeness review. And afterwards, CDE will allocate a DMF filing number with the status of I for inactive. This I status will also display on the CDE DMF platform. At this stage, the applicant can export samples to China for the purpose of testing and study use. Subsequently, upon drug product registration, for example, ANDA or NDA, CDE will refer to the inactive number and review the DMF dossier together with the drug dossier, and then activate the filing number shown as A for active. This A status will also display on CDE DMF platform. And the second pathway is for API standalone review and approval, which is an independent registration pathway similar to EU CEP certificate, which I will share with you more details in later slides. Under this pathway, the applicant will also obtain an inactive filing number after completeness review, and then the application will proceed to CDE's technical review for subsequent activation. And the third one is to include the AEP dossier as part of the drug product dossier. Therefore, as AEP supplier, your data shall be shared with the drug applicant, whereas pathway 1 and 2, your data is protected and not be disclosed to the drug product applicant, which is why we recommend suppliers that care about confidentiality to file DMF separately. As for the general steps and the timeline for DMF filing, the first step is to conduct material completeness check to identify if the materials are generally complete. Step 2, conduct a more detailed data gap analysis and provide guidance on supplementing missing data. Step 3, prepare DMF dossier in Chinese and file to CDE. Step 4, CDE reviews dossier for completeness and feedback in 1 to 2 weeks. At this stage, for APIs, CDE issues notice for acceptance payment letter and notice to start preparing for NIFDC testing. Step 5, CDE issues the inactive filing number in around 1 to 2 weeks on the official online platform. And for step 6 and 7, it usually takes around 5 to 16 months for the technical review and activation of the filing number, including the queuing time at CDE. So it also depends on the associated drug product and its application category. For example, whether it's a new registration or a change application. So in conclusion, the total timeline of DMF review and approval is about 10 to 20 months, according to the statistics of recent years. And here is the general DMF material checklist for AEP respectively. Before filing a DMF, you need to prepare a product dossier according to China regulatory requirements. Some of the requirements in the checklist are common across all categories of AEP, such as applicant information, certificates, and a letter of authorization. Others are category specific. For example, API dossier is generally prepared as ICH M4 CTD format, whereas excipient and packaging dossiers are compliant with Chinese regulations. So usually, our clients would provide us with a pre-approved US or EU DMF dossier first, and then we would conduct a material completeness check and gap analysis accordingly. And comparing to the old approval system, the new DMF filing system has the following differences. First, the timeline of approving AEP has remarkably shortened from up to several years to now around 1 to 1.5 years. For the administration fee, it has adjusted to around 25,000 euros to 50,000 euros for APIs, and it remains no charge for excipients and packaging materials. Previously, NMPA issued approval license, now using the filing system with API receiving acceptance and approval notice. And the new system requires annual report every year. So based on above information, you may find China DMF filing policy has many similarities and differences between EU and US DMF regulations. In the following slides, I'll compare and explain some distinctive differences between these markets from the perspective of pathways, DMF scope, confidentiality, timeline and cost, submission, approval status, and renewal. So the first difference is registration pathways. China has 3 pathways for AEP approval. The first one, binding review, is very similar to US DMF and EU ASMF, which means active substance master file. This is for drug substances listed or not listed in the European Pharmacopoeia. All 3 are common in that the dossier binds with the drug product for technical review and allow valuable confidential IP or know-how of the manufacturer of the active substance to be protected, while at the same time allowing MA holder to take full responsibility for the drug products. And the second pathway, API standalone review, is most similar to EU CEP, which stands for Certificate of Suitability for APIs listed in the monographs of European Pharmacopoeia. They both are standalone approval system for APIs. The third pathway is submitting the dossier as part of the drug product, which is very similar for EU, US, and China. The second difference is the scope of product categories for DMF filing. For EU ASMF, it's only applicable for active substance, whereas CEP is for both APIs and excipients. For China, DMF is applicable for all AEP products. And for US, the DMF covers AEP and also other categories listed down here. And additionally, I'll also share some special conditions in China that applicants need to pay attention to. For APIs, according to the last version of API acceptance review draft, if the same API is produced by the same company at the same production site with the same manufacturing process and specification, should be registered under 1 DMF number. Therefore, if any of these preconditions is different, should be registered as 2 DMFs. For excipients in China, there is an exemption list which includes, for example, flavors, essence, pigments, and others. For multiple packaging products, make sure you know how many DMFs you need to file, since one product may consist of multiple packaging components made of different materials. The rules for defining what counts as 1 DMF has general principles, including if the packaging components have different models, sizes, and specifications, and meanwhile, the manufacturing process, raw materials, and functions are all the same, they could be registered under 1 DMF. Otherwise, the same product with different product models or characteristics might not be acceptable to register under 1 DMF. If you want the exemption list of excipients or need us to help check how many DMFs are required for your products, can contact us later. So the third difference is confidentiality. In the EU, ASMF is divided into applicant part and restricted part, also known as open and closed part, respectively. The China system here is more similar to the US and EU CEP, in that we only have confidential part, which is not divided into open or closed part. For China DMF, only basic information is displayed on the CDE DMF platform. And it's very common for the distributor in China to register on your behalf, but this is not recommended. So to avoid disclosing unnecessary confidential data, it's suggested to appoint an independent agent to help file your DMF. For the US, the information is confidentially submitted and reviewed by US FDA. And the fourth difference is time and cost. The registration timeline comes from when DMF application is accepted. So in China, it only takes 1 to 2 weeks to obtain the inactive filing number after CDE accepts the materials. The timeline for obtaining the active filing number averages from 5 to 16 months, depending on several factors. For example, whether it's standalone review or binding review, and the application category of associated drug product also matters. Generally speaking, a change application is faster than a new registration. Additionally, the timeline would extend if any supplementary study is required by CDE. And in the US, only API is required for technical evaluation. The timeline of completeness assessment is 60 days and around 10 months for binding review with drug registration. And the administration cost for China API is around 25,000 euros to 50,000 euros, as I mentioned before, which falls between EU and the US. And it's free for excipients and packaging materials. Next one, the fifth difference is in how dossiers are submitted. EU and US use eCTD format, while China doesn't currently have eCTD implementation. So APIs should be submitted in CTD format and a digital version on a CD. Excipients and packaging dossiers should meet Chinese regulation format requirements and be submitted in digital version on a CD as well. The sixth difference is approval status. In EU, the product will obtain a reference number for ASMF, while for CEP, a certificate will be issued upon approval. In China and the US, they use a similar approval status system, although the same status symbol stands for different meanings. For example, in China, inactive status means the DMF dossier is complete in terms of format review, and active means the DMF has passed technical review. Whereas in the US, inactive means the DMF is closed, either by the holder or by FDA. And active means the DMF is open and acceptable for filing. Also in China, a notice will be issued for API approval for the first time or upon renewal. But in the US, once FDA finalizes the completeness assessment on the API, the DMF number will be listed in the available for reference list. After successfully passing technical review, a first adequate letter or no further comments letter will be issued. So the last difference is API renewal cycle and responsibility. The renewal cycle is 5 years for EU CEP and China DMF. After registration, DMF holders should submit change application if any important changes occur, which is the same in China, EU, and the US. And also, annual report is required in all 3 markets. Now we have a basic sense of China DMF filing system. So when preparing the DMF dossier for China, please be aware of potential pitfalls in technical requirements. I'll also share with you some tips on how to overcome these. So for API products, the most common pitfalls are mainly relating to following parts. First, manufacturing process. Second, quality specification. And third, impurity study. These issues can lead to either a deficiency letter or worse, a rejection letter. And around 35% of the DMF dossiers have issues with the data of manufacturing process. For example, the production process flow chart and the reaction equation are incomplete. Key information is missing. Another very specific issue is the process description is incomprehensive, which is more commonly found in products from Europe and Japan. In addition, some applicants select improper starting materials, in which case CDE might require reselection of eligible starting materials, as well as complete research and validation data. And around 25% of the dossier have gaps in the quality specification. For example, lack of test items in the specification, mainly because of not doing thorough research on comparison with pharmacopoeia standards of China and other related or regulated markets such as EU and the US. Another example is the specification not compliant with Chinese pharmacopoeia without legit reasons. And for injectable APIs in particular, if the microbial limit and endotoxin tests are not included in the specification, CDE will request applicant to supplement the research data. And the last one, around 15%, are relating to impurity study. For example, lack of elemental and genotoxic impurities, or structural formulas for some impurities. This will also concern the CDE reviewers. And there are also some typical pitfalls regarding excipients and packaging materials. For excipients, most issues are also related to the three parts I just mentioned about APIs. First, the quality specification, especially safety-wise, is more relaxed than Chinese pharmacopoeia or national standards. Second, the production process is sometimes insufficient, or the special production equipment list is incomplete. Another one is many applicants don't provide study on potential residual solvents, elemental impurities, or potential mutagenic impurities. As for packaging materials, quality specification is also a big issue, mainly because of incompliance with the technical and format requirements of Chinese pharmacopoeia and national standards. Another common issue is for packaging products made of polymer materials, such as plastic and rubber. Stability data is not available as per requested. The last one, a more specific issue for high-risk packaging products, is the lack of compatibility and safety study. So regarding above pitfalls, we suggest that you prepare the specifications in consideration of Chinese pharmacopoeia and relevant standards to minimize the risks and accelerate the DMF filing process. Now, I'll share with you the top 4 tips on how to overcome these pitfalls. Firstly, to follow China's regulatory updates, as China's drug policy is rapidly evolving and significant reforms and changes occur frequently, we expect new upcoming regulations to replace the older ones, which could potentially impact your market entry plan. So keep a close eye on these developments. Secondly, have a strategic plan and research for the fastest pathway options to China, as it's important to understand the pros and cons of different routes to the market and adapt your market access strategies in China accordingly. Thirdly, mind the gap, close the gap. We can't emphasize enough the importance of localization according to CDE's requirements. Although China has joined ICH in 2017, there are detailed differences in the technical requirements. Therefore, the gaps in the dossier should be closed as much as possible to increase the chance of approval and accelerate the access to the market. Lastly, you should appoint a local agent to support with activities in China. With different culture, language, and requirements, it will be a lot easier to have a local team on the ground to support you. So if you have any concerns or face any challenges, we're here to provide end-to-end registration services. For DMF filing, the service scope covers the following: assisting in dossier preparation, such as completeness check, data gap analysis, and dossier submission. We can also follow up with CDE to obtain the inactive filing number first, and then pass technical review, and finally activate your filing number. Thank you, everybody. That's all for my presentation today. Now for the Q&A session, we have two additional guests joining us: Raymond, our BD director, and Marilyn, our RE manager, who will join the Q&A panel to share their insights and answer your questions as well. I will now pass it over to Raymond to moderate the Q&A session.
Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Very nice to be here and connect with everyone. So here I'd just like to say, if you have any additional questions, please input your questions in the chat box now, and then we will answer your questions. For now, we will firstly answer the 3 questions that were pre-submitted before the webinar. And we have a very good question regarding packaging DMF. Is it possible to register one DMF product detailed in this and have the same type, but destined for different pharma customers? Also, if the materials used are not always the same, can they also go into one DMF? So my understanding of this question is different clients will have different requests on specification. So in this case, is one DMF sufficient? So April, are you able to answer this question?
Thank you, Raymond. Sure. So as per the regulation of decrease number 56, products sharing the same production process, materials, and function may be registered under one DMF. Therefore, if the products vary only in their shape or size designed for different pharma customers, but have the same materials, production process, and intended use, they can be registered as one DMF. Similarly, if it is a packaging system, all the detailed materials of each packaging component can be included in one DMF. However, if the materials of different product types are not the same, they should be registered in separate DMFs. For instance, promobutyl rubber stopper and chlorobutyl rubber stopper should be registered as 2 DMFs. So here it's they are the same packaging, rubber stopper, but with different raw materials. So they should be registered as 2 DMFs. As I also mentioned before, if you need help to evaluate how many DMF numbers is required according to your products, we are happy to help you check, and you can contact us later.
Yeah, and I just want to add here is, oftentimes it's very important to plan ahead, especially with the DMF registration. You never know in future what the client will request in terms of expanding the scope of the specification. So making sure at the start you plan ahead with including as much information you think would be necessary to enlarge the scope of the specification scope into the drug master file, so that you can plan ahead and then submit rather than going back and doing adjustments or change application.
Right. Thank you, Raymond. So we can move to next one.
Yeah, so the second question we have is relating to for a clinical trial, does it require to conduct a review of the DMF in advance?
So the answer to this question will be, if you are applying for a drug clinical trial, it's recommended that you review the API dossier, if available, prior to submitting your application. And regarding the DMF situation, if the API doesn't have a DMF number, it can be submitted along with the drug clinical trial application dossier. While API DMF is not mandatory for a CTA application, the API dossier can also be submitted separately to CDE by the API manufacturer or the appointed local agent, especially if there are confidentiality concerns. So this situation actually is not uncommon. We've helped a few clients with this kind of project. So our team is very experienced in handling such cases. And we would be very happy to support you if you are facing this kind of situation right now. Okay. And the last one.
Yep, thank you, April. So the final question as pre-submitted is, can any types of biological products be submitted in a DMF? Actually, I think we also had a similar question in the live chat box as well from Venkat Reddy. So it's relating to NMPA accept DMFs for biological ingredients. So I think, yeah, this also answers this question. So
yes,
thank you, April.
Thank you, Raymond, and it's a very good question. So the answer is currently China DMF policy only applies to chemical APIs, meaning that DMF registration is usually not applicable to APIs for biological products. However, for certain products, the classification may differ in China compared to other countries. For example, heparin-derived products are classified as chemical APIs in China, while they may be classified as biological APIs in other countries. So we suggest applicants provide specific product information to our team for review and confirmation. And for biological product origin excipients, they can be registered in a DMF according to decree number 56.
Yep, so thank you, April. Anything, sorry, I just interrupted. Anything else to add there?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So now we move on to the live Q&A. We've got very popular today, a lot of questions. So I also want to bring another colleague, Marilyn Zhang, who will also join the Q&A session now also. So I would like to start with a question from Luke. So Luke asked a question relating to, are DMFs for excipients and packaging material always required for marketing authorization applications to China, or can you submit without? So maybe I could direct this question firstly to Marilyn.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Luke, for your question. Actually, it's a very common and good question for all the foreign companies who want to enter China. For excipients and packaging material, generally the DMF registration is required. But if your product is not quite confidentiality sensitive, you can also choose to combine your dossier with your buyer, the finished dosage forms product dossier when they register their products. But most of the manufacturer, they are quite confidentiality sensitive, or they don't want to share the full DMF dossiers to the drug products. So and then combine together. So they register DMF, and then they can authorize the DMF number to different buyers, like let's say company A, B, C. The three drug companies are using your product's excipient or packaging material, and then you can just use one simple authorization letter to say that like company A can use our products, the name and also the DMF number, and then you will not disclose any technical, especially technical information to the drug company. So the information only staying with the authority. But if you don't have the DMF number, so you have to provide your DMF dossier repeatedly to company A, B, and C every time when they register their products. So I hope I already answer your questions clearly. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marilyn. Very comprehensive. So I'll follow on with another question by Christian. Christian asks whether there only one single manufacturing site permitted in a Chinese DMF.
Yes, for this question, it varies from API, excipient and packaging material. So far for excipient and packaging material, it's okay that when you register one DMF number, you can include multiple manufacturing sites in the same document, in the same dossier. But for the API, you cannot, because each manufacturing site is may affect the a lot of specifications of the products. So normally for API, only one DMF number, one manufacturing site. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Another question relating, well, from Sankaran. Is there any NMPA guidelines for selection of starting materials for APIs? Maybe I can answer this question. So for China specific, there's no special guideline. So you can refer to ICHQ 11. And another question by Sankaran also is whether API approval notice will be given upon renewal, i.e. after submission of annual report, or any renewal period is there in particular. So maybe Marilyn, you can answer this question.
Yes. This is actually a very, very good question, because after a lot of my other clients that registered their products and they forgot about the renewal. The renewal only required for a API, not for excipient and packaging material. But the annual report here, it's a different thing. It's required for API, excipient, and packaging material, all of them. So for the renewal, it's required to submit it every 5 years for the API products, and the approval notice will be issued after you pass all the reviews of from CDE. It depends on whether it refers to technical or not. If there's no any changes, there won't be very complicated technical reviews. So the renewal period particularly is every 5 years. Thank you.
Yeah, so another question, actually we already answered earlier, and by Venkat, whether NMPA accepts DMFs for biological ingredients too. So yeah, already answered this question. April, you would like to repeat quickly?
Yeah, so the simple answer will be China DMF it only applies to chemical drugs, not for biologics. But as I mentioned before, you need to pay attention to the classification. Some products are considered as biologics in Europe, for example, like the hairpin derived products, but actually it's considered as a chemical drug in China. So if you are not sure about this, you can always come to us to help check the classification in China. And that's for API. And for excipients, yes, you can apply for DMF in China.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, April. And we have a question from Neha, whether a certificate of attendance may be provided after this session. I think this is probably a question for Eric.
And also,
sorry. So there is a recording that will be shared. If it's up to you if you want to share the slides as well, but we can.
Yeah. So it's no problem. Yeah, we'll share the slides and also the recording. But you mentioned about a certificate of attendance. Will this be?
We don't tend to do that with the sponsored webinars.
Okay.
I think there may be one if on request it might be possible, but I'll have to double check that.
Okay. Yeah. Also another question, different question from Dave Parry. Is there an option for veterinary master file to be used for active substances intended for veterinary medicine? So Dave, a good question. So because this webinar we're focused on pharmaceutical drug, if you could leave us an email on info@accestra.com, we could direct you to the relevant colleague who can answer that question. Thank you.
Yeah, and one more point about veterinary medicines, it's not the same authorization anymore. It's not NMPA or SMR. It's the administration, the Ministry of Agriculture. So it's totally different system and management and the different authorities.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. So another question a good question from Christian. For an API DMF, is it possible to include several primary packaging materials? Marilyn, since you're convenient, can you answer this question, please?
Yes, sure. For the one API DMF dossier, it is possible to include several primary packaging material. And following Christian's another question for in one API DMF, it's not possible to have different manufacturing sites. It's because the different sites, it's quite complicated. There's no specific requirement according to the regulation, but practically speaking, it's not easy to include different manufacturing sites in one DMF because it might affect the specification of the product. And also the several manufacturer for the intermediate can may also have may differ in the impurities, and also it will affect the final API's specification. It may affect the final specification. So if you have a specific question related, I think it's better that you drop us an email, and then we can discuss your situation specifically based on your situation. That will be better, because right now we cannot give you a confirmed answer about like, you can include or you cannot, or the several manufacturers from different intermediates. It always depends on the specific details, and also what kind of intermediate and what kind of manufacturing process are involved, because of the several manufacturer and also different manufacturing sites. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Marilyn. A question from Francesca. How can I manage an update of DMF binding to a drug product? So for this, usually, maybe I can answer, and then Marilyn can supplement, or if April has any additional things to add. So usually for DMF, if there are any changes to the drug master file, you can submit the changes via an annual report, because you have to submit on an annual basis. And the change could be minor, medium, or major. So depending on the different classification, making sure that you understand, what is needed to include in the annual report, and also if necessary to understand whether you need to apply for a change application, and that's when you need to understand the classification of is it just a minor change, or is it just a medium, or is it just a major? So depending on the classification, there are different requirements. So important to understand, what is the classification for that change, and include that in the annual report. Do you have anything to add, Marilyn and April?
Oh, yes. Actually, one more point. It's about the minor change. You don't have to submit the change application. You can include it in the annual report, because it needs to be submitted every year. For the minor and major, for the medium and the major changes, you need to submit it for to different level of authority, either the provincial local MPA or the national MPA. So it depends on the specific change. If there's no any change, and then you can just include this kind of statement in the annual report that there's no any change regarding the products. So if you have any specific questions about it, you can also drop an email to us, and then we can help you to define the changes, whether it's minor, medium, or major changes. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Marilyn. A additional question from Christian, a follow-up one is
it's already Raymond, it's already answered. Yeah.
Already answered. Yeah, sorry. Let me have a look. What else is there? Oh, there's one more. by Vaishali Patel. So sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. The question is, if a DMF is withdrawn or closed in China, what status would it have?
Okay. For this question, as in April already explained, in China we have two status for the DMF. One is inactive, it's I number, and one is active number, it's A number. So if you withdraw the application, then which means this DMF number will be cancelled. So it's not I or A, it's cancelled. So you cannot sell the product anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's quite clear. I believe we've actually answered all the questions for today. And if you do think of any additional questions later on, you can email us at info@accestra.com. We'll be very happy to follow up on your questions. And also, as previously mentioned, the webinar will be made available, and we'll share with you after. So thank you very much for listening. And April, Marilyn, you have anything else to add?
No, yeah. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and also thank you for all the questions. And yeah, if you have further questions or queries regarding China market regulatory affairs, don't hesitate to send us email, and we will be very happy to help.
Yeah, and that's a draw to a close for the webinar. Thank you very much, and goodbye.